What is up, everybody? This is Alex from IHE TV. I'm jet lagged, but I'm gonna talk about not jet lagged enough to not be able to talk about Peacemaker Season 2, the last in the string of DC projects helmed by James Gunn before we get projects that he didn't write/direct. So this Green Lantern show, Supergirl movie, and Clayface. It's like the next phase of tests for this universe to see how it goes. This video will contain spoilers, so you've been warned about that. Before I get into spoilers, top level thoughts. I thought Season 2 was decent, had some high highs that stand out in my mind, but also I can't escape the feeling that there was something kind of unsatisfying, mostly about the structure, or how certain threads are being left open in a way that I don't know how they're going to address them or feed into them. I don't really know what the plan is here, especially with James Gunn addressing that there isn't going to be a Season 3 for the show, despite the amount of threads that are there to be picked up on. So we'll see how that goes. That's kind of baked into this universe building stuff. It can kind of retroactively be elevated or worsened by how things are approached in the future. But as far as a standalone, I feel like the first season was a bit more consistent, especially with its structure and the way the story crescendoed. This is another James Gunn project where you have an ensemble of misfits that get in a line and walk in slow motion towards the camera. You can call this his director calling card, I guess, but it's getting to a point where I'd really like to see something a bit different from him, because as far as criticizing his work, it's getting repetitive in the criticisms itself, because they all kind of have the same pros and cons. These flawed, likable, misfit characters, I especially like. Why does his face look like that in this image? But John Cena is genuinely really great as this character. There's a moment in episode 7 where he lets out a blood-curdling scream in a way that really sells his loaded trauma. And I don't know, I love when characters are put through the ringer and watching the way they react and deal with it. And this whole setup of this alternate universe where he gets to interact with his dad and brother again is definitely the best stuff from the show. But how do I explain the issue I have with the pace of this? It feels simultaneously too short, but also like you could condense this as well. Because a lot of the episodes are about half an hour long, and it would start veering into somewhere plot-wise that's alluring and has a great hook. The opening of the show has a great hook. I like the place the first couple episodes start and take you. The egregious Bud Light product placement aside that is continuous throughout the whole show. But the multiverse thing, it's a core part of comic storytelling. I don't find it inherently irritating as far as like a trend is concerned, as long as the effort is put into these character arcs and what they do with the actual storytelling to enhance the characters, get us to know more about them, their trials and tribulations. Some of the stuff I brought up in the video I made about the first and second episode continue to be true as far as the humor, which again is very James Gunny as far as when it hits, it really hits and can be hilarious. All of the stuff with Freddie Stromer is hilarious. He's like the funniest part. I love this character. I love all these memes about him being Deadpool if he was actually funny. Sorry, Deadpool fans. But I could have done with more of this guy. I hope we get to see more of him in the future because he owns this character. So as far as some of the threads that were placed down but not really followed through or left open in a way that feels like, man, you could have done a lot more with that. Going to another dimension and seeing that Rick Flag Jr., I guess, even though they're like nearly the same age in real life. Frank Grillo, who plays Rick Flag Sr., who was also in Creature Commandos. I've seen some complaints about how he doesn't feel like the same person, but that didn't really bother me. I'm also fine with the creative license of there being slight differences here and there with the hyper-stylized animated show like Creature Commandos, where he's got the big tuft of white hair and everything. I think that's fine. I like the continuity with him being Superman and this overlap of this world building. But yeah, this felt like a thread that really could have had a lot more emotional oomph or payoff to it. This is the only episode he's in quite early on, which I guess is supposed to be more of a cameo role. And the cameos are pretty fun in the show. They don't feel too egregious. I know some people are let down at the scale of, or lack of scale of the cameos. Like I guess people wanted to see Superman or more of Guy Gardner or Hawkgirl or whatever. But it was cool to see Lex come in, and James Gunn has clearly got a lot of joy from being able to write this edgy, juvenile, smutty dialogue with these characters that obviously cannot be done in a big, broad Superman project. So it's nice to see a bit of range there, even if a lot of the humor doesn't fully work for me all the time. So let's try and explain the issue with the structure, I feel. Because as you can see, a lot of high ratings here, and then it drops massively towards the end. A lot of people find that last episode unsatisfying, but why? It feels like what is happening in this episode is inconsequential and maybe should have been somehow an episode or two before, because the pop that the episodes 6 and 7 have feel like a big payoff to this build-up from the previous 5 episodes. You get the emotional high in episode 7 with what happens with his dad and brother. The pace of it does feel quite quick. it wraps up very quickly, and going back to the threads that are left open, they do make an effort to show that his brother does survive, I think, which leaves you with this feeling that, oh, that he's gonna do something in the last episode, he's gonna go through the door, try and interact with the Peacemaker. I feel like they needed at least one more interaction or something like this, because otherwise it feels like a thread that maybe will be picked up on, maybe won't be, which is a shame because the dynamic was really interesting. So then when you get to this last episode and there's entire sequences dedicated to Dibby monsters in a candy world, it just feels like I needed to do this sooner for this to not feel like an anticlimax or unsatisfying. Because like while it might be funny in a vacuum to see these little goobers like humping the face of these guys, my mind is more like, well, I want to see what's happening with Peacemaker. He's just had this huge emotional release and the tensions are really high, and it feels like there was more to ride off that, but you just don't really get it. With the Rick Flag stuff kind of concluding with him getting revenge on Peacemaker for killing his son by stranding him in another dimension under the guise of testing out the technology. That's kind of a fun B-plot with the Lex stuff, bringing in the dude from Superman who worked on the portal tech and the whole set reuse from the movie. I like the idea of taking these smaller bit characters and maybe fleshing them out or having some continuity with them, even if, again, some of the humor didn't work for me with this guy. Adebayo gets a quick little arc. It's kind of forgotten for most of the middle of the show and is quickly wrapped up in the last episode. The performances are good, but I couldn't help but feel like I'd like the needle to be leaning more towards the emotional character development than the CG Dibbies humping faces. The balance felt a little bit off for me. The Prime Eagle thing is quite funny in the middle. That's the kind of comedy B-plot I enjoyed a lot more. I think including Tim Meadows was a good shout. He's got such an interesting, strange cadence with his line delivery that really catches you off guard. And the bird blindness thing is a good bit. I love the theory that maybe he's going to be the one to say, is it a bird, is it a plane? In an upcoming Superman movie, that would be funny. I dig his conclusion, one of the better comedic elements in the show. Who else is there to talk about? Eagly? He's always the standout to me. The visual effects are pretty excellent for this character. You don't really spend much time distracted by the idea that it's a CG character. The same was true in Superman with the dog, but with the smaller scale of the show, it's pretty impressive. There is some like campier, jankier looking stuff like with these guys flying around, but that's not really something I would pinpoint as a bigger issue with this season. And going back to the constant James Gunn isms like the needle drops, they were okay. It's another thing I'm kind of getting sick of, just because of how predictable it feels. And the last episode in particular was quite egregious with that. I wasn't really vibing with the song choices, the way it was used, but that might be more of a result of just how kind of narratively unsatisfying the final episode winds up being. It's not horrendous or anything. It just feels like a bit of a missed opportunity, and especially knowing that James Gunn would have worked on this around the same time as Superman, it's hard to escape the feeling that maybe he's stretching himself a little bit thin, that maybe if he could have had a co-writer or two to flesh this out a little bit more, maybe give it an episode or two more, or just tighten things up a bit. Let me know if you agree with me on that pacing thing, because I couldn't help but feel like that was perhaps the least consistent thing about it. So another James Gunn project I think's decent, probably enjoyed it about the same as the Creature Commandos. I think the first season's probably better, and I'm continuing to be intrigued and interested by Peacemaker as a character in a way I just never would have anticipated. John Cena owns the role, the cast is great, but yeah, I think I'll cut it off there, because I mean, it's almost getting to a point where I can just kind of re-upload the same criticisms as long as it's a James Gunn project. Flawed, likable, ensemble cast, needle drops, walking slow-mo in a line, uneven humor, but likable and weirdly quaint at the heart of it. Nothing too stand out about the production. It's fairly plain, clean, crisp. Nothing too interesting going on with the lighting or camera work. It does the job. So let me know your thoughts on the second season. Do you like it more than me? Were you let down more than me? How do you think this universe is shaping up? I'll see you on the next video. Bye!